Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. This week we head back to T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas for NOCHE UFC. Just a fight night, but we do have the women's flyweight strap up for grabs. We got the rematch between Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko. In our co-main event, absolute banger between Kevin Holland and Jack Della Maddalena. Saturday's Mexico's Independence Day, man. We got a ton of the UFC Hispanic talent being showcased on this card. I'm ready to dive in, give our thoughts and bets for this 11-fight card. Go ahead and do us a favor, pass it over to you real quick to recap 293.
Yeah, so we came out, nothing to write home about by any means, but we did come out unscathed pretty much. We'll take a look over at your card first. Your two straight bets were both solid picks. Jamie Malarkey, you got him at the early price tag of minus 180, which seems that was a good bet, but you might have gotten away with that one. Who knows? It was a very close fight. Kevin Jousset, initially I was a little worried. I thought he wasn't getting it going in that first round, but then he ended up finding that sub and covered that minus 135 price tag relatively easily. As we moved down, you went to a parlay with Kopp and Jenkins. That's a tough one. That's a tough pill to swallow too. It's hard to cap a broken arm, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that parlay. Then the under 2.5 rounds and the Kopp versus Dos Santos. Hey man, I was thinking that Santos was going to give him a good fight. He did. It was an excellent fight regardless. Mm-hmm. And then you also hit Pedro plus 3.5 and Miranda plus 3.5. Just took the safe option there with the points in case it did go to decision. Neither one of those guys did, so they were both good hits. This was a minus 0.15 unit night. Like I said, it practically broke even on the night. We'll look over at my card. I went 2-1 on my straight picks. Austin Lane versus Justin Tafa. That was my first pick, and I put it on Twitter, and it got a lot of likes and stuff. And I just knew right then and there that's too much exposure. That's for sure not going to hit, and it did not. He looked awful. I thought about putting Tafa in a hedge by TKO, but ended up backing out. I do wish I would have in hindsight. And then Tyson Pedro, I'm glad that we were both on it. We both knew it was a buy low spot for somebody who's usually a minus 300. So I was happy that we both got in on that. And then Gabriel Miranda as well. Looked awesome. First round finish. Can't really ask for much more. I had Tuivasa by TKO round 1. I liked the price, and I thought that he was just going to sell out. He should have just sold out, I mean, it didn't go well for him. And then Olberg by TKO, who gets his first submission of his career. I don't even understand. He had him dead to rights on the ground if he would have just continued punching. I guess he wanted that submission win. I'm not sure. I ended up plus 1.10 units. So like I said, pretty much it was a winning UFC card for the podcast, and nothing to write home about.
Right.
We get over to the first fight of the night for NOCHE UFC, and we go in the strawweight division. Josefine Knutson taking on Marnic Man. Knutson, she's been on the radar a couple of times. She got her first win where I saw her in Road to UFC, and then also went to the Contender Series and won her fight. She's looked great, although she does struggle to find the finish, and I think that's probably why maybe she doesn't have as much hype, and they're putting her on this first fight of the card so that she can get some publicity. Because Marnic Man does not have much to offer, man. I wasn't very happy with what I've seen in tape. Man specifically, when she's on the feet, she doesn't have good footwork. She'll follow her opponents around. She's only 5 foot tall, which I know you don't have, there's not very many tall women in the strawweight division, but it is definitely something of concern. And Josephine, she's strong in the clinch. She has good hips, and I do think that she's going to dominate as much as a low-level strawweight woman can. I wouldn't necessarily put her in my parlays because there's a lot of red flags, being that it's women's MMA and 6 fights, 12 fights total for both girls. Knutson's the pick for me.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say with this one. I pretty much agree with everything you said. Knutson, she didn't get signed on the Contender Series after a very dominant performance, but gets to step in here on short notice, and then loses her opponent that she stepped in on short notice for. So Marnic Man stepping in on even shorter notice here. very undersized girl, and I think she gets dominated in the clinch. I think she gets dominated up against the fence. Knutson, she has that height behind her. She trains with Hamzat, and I think until she's upset in all these lower level fights, she's going to have that type of price tag near her. And I kind of struggle with you. I don't know if she finds the finish or if she just dominates for 15 minutes. So never really in the business of laying chalk on a women's fight like this either. But I personally don't see Marnic Man getting this one done. Moving on, man. Charlie Campbell taking on Alex Reyes in the men's lightweight division. Campbell's taking a short notice flyer here, but I do think it's one of the most winnable fights somebody could come back into the UFC for. Campbell's known for his mishap on the Contender Series, almost sleeping Chris Duncan, kind of rushing things and getting caught himself. But, dude, I think he's twice the talented fighter here. I think he's much bigger, younger, faster. You got Alex coming back, 36 years old, 6-year layoff. I told you I was reading up on the layoff. The guy was getting stem cells done in his back. One of them was tainted, infected or something, even lost the ability to walk for a short period of time over these 6 years. I don't think the guy wears shots very well, and he's in no spot that I want to back him, really, no matter the price tag here. I think Charlie jumps on this guy before he can kind of shake that ring rust off and gets the first or second round TKO.
Definitely a lot of unknowns coming into this one. The fact that Alex Reyes had taken a step up against Mike Perry, welterweight, and came in at 167.5 pounds, he's going to look undersized. I think that there's just a ton of unknowns. I'm happy that he's at least coming back down to the lightweight division. That is a positive for him, but 6 year layoff after 30 years old, it's usually never a good thing. Charlie Campbell, I've tried to back him before in that Chris Duncan fight specifically, and he looks good until he doesn't. But like I said, I just think that there's a ton of unknowns in this fight. It's probably a stay away fight from me. Although I expect Alex Reyes to not start as hot as he has in the past, just to get some feel inside the octagon. Right. You know, it's a long time away, so I'm sure that there's going to be a period where he's trying to just get his feet under him while he's in the octagon. So I could see maybe the over on this fight hitting, but it's, again, probably a layaway fight is the smartest move here.
Yeah.
Maybe Twitter's fight of the week. I've seen a lot of people on both sides, and I think that includes us right here. Yeah. We go to the flyweight division where we see Tracy Cortez taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. I've tried to fade Tracy Cortez a couple of times now, and it sucks whenever you lose a fight or lose betting against Tracy Cortez because she makes you pay with that top control, man. Yeah. I mean, you're just sitting there and you're like, get off your back, move, move. And she's just able to stay heavy and utilize that wrestling. Against Jasmine Jasudavicius, Jasudavicius has been underrepresented. What am I trying to say? She's been undervalued in her recent fight, especially against Miranda Maverick. You look at Jasmine Jasudavicius' credentials wrestling. She's got them, man. She's got everything you could ask for. I do think that she has enough counter wrestling here to possibly give Cortez some problems. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get behind it, but for what it's worth, I think if this fight does stay on the feet, that Jasmine has more tools on the feet, and she could possibly give Cortez some problems. Now, if Cortez does get that first takedown, I do think that it could be a reoccurring thing, and it could be another lay-and-pray session. But Jasmine being the longer fighter, I think she has the counter wrestling to keep it on the feet. I'm more leaning towards Jasmine Jasudavicius, especially if this line stays with her as a dog.
Yeah, I'm on the Tracy Cortez side. It's my first bet of the night. I got 1.25 units on her at minus 125, and it sucks because I actually got a bad number, and I was thinking the line was going to move the other way. This is the first time we can kind of talk about it being Mexico's Independence Day. These Hispanic fighters being in good spots, kind of set up to win, close on the scorecards, kind of like Malarkey fight. I kind of feel like I know who it's going to be going to there. On the feet, I don't – Jasmine is probably the better striker, but I think she is very hittable for a woman. And I think that can kind of swing it toward Tracy's favor. But both of these girls, like, large minutes of all of their fights play out on the mat. There's lots of grappling. There's lots of wrestling. And I really favor Tracy Cortez there. I know that Jasmine's got the Canadian wrestling credentials and things, but I personally, watching tape, I think Tracy is the better wrestler here. I think she's the one that's more likely to wind up on top, way more likely to ride out minutes in Jasmine's guard. She's a tough girl. She's got good forward pressure. I think she's just. I talked to you about it earlier. I think she's a girl that the bookmakers, they can't get right. They're kind of, like I said, they made Natalia Silva a plus 200 to her in that debut. And in their follow-up fight, she's like virtually a pick'em against a girl with no ground game, and Jasmine destroys her. And then she's a massive underdog and cashes against Miranda Maverick. I think they're in a spot where they can't make her a massive underdog again and let her cash, but in no way could they ever make her a favorite over Tracy Cortez here on NOCHE UFC. I personally think they kind of are lost at what to do with Jasmine. They kind of just threw out this low pick'em line. I think Tracy should be like minus 145 here. I think she wins a clear decision with the wrestling, man. So a little first disagreement on the night. Not too much investment for myself, though, man. And I never will be on a ladies' fight like that. Mm-hmm. Moving, flyweight men's, we got Edgar Chairez taking on Daniel Lacerda. It's an exciting fight. And I see people playing Lacerda. You are getting a good underdog price tag. And one thing that I always look for in an underdog is finishing potential. Lacerda's got that, man. He's big power. He's unorthodox, comes from a great camp, got good jiu-jitsu. But what the guy doesn't have is the ability to put his game together for more than 5 minutes. This guy's on an L4, finished in all 4 of these losses. And personally, I see people talking about how the UFC kept him around because of his exciting style. And yes, I think that plays into it, but part of me thinks that they kept him around to give somebody like Chairez, a favorable spot on Mexico's Independence Day, or make him fly to Paris to fight somebody, Australia. Like, I think that's why he was kept around here. Chairez is a dangerous guy. He has finished all 10 of his wins, got some submissions, got good hands. I personally feel like round 2 and round 3 props, if you get plus 500, plus 800, those are props that you have to hit. Chairez is tough. I still expect him to be there after round 1, and I think he's going to start putting it on Lacerda. I've hit the under 1.5 at minus 185. I think the under 2.5 could be one of the best parlay pieces on the card, despite these guys being flyweights. I don't think Lacerda has 8 minutes of gas. I'm going to go Chairez with the second round TKO.
So I think you nailed why they're keeping around Lacerda, just being that he never is in a boring fight. I'm not sure about the Edgar Chairez, man. I don't think the UFC is trying to set up somebody like Chairez, giving him Tatsuro Taira first fight of the night. This might just be an opportunity.
Thank you. This is the thank you for taking Taira.
I don't even know. I think it's just that he's Mexican. Like, I don't think I don't think Daniel Lacerda is an easy fight for anybody, man. Like, at the end of the day, you have to be elite to be able to withstand that initial pressure from Lacerda. And I do think that Edgar has that. Him being Mexican, I'm not worried about him getting knocked out. He has been subbed twice, which is the biggest concern. And they haven't been like getting dominated. It's just in the mix of things, getting a guillotined or something like that. And that really is beneficial to Daniel Lacerda, who just creates chaos when he's in there. I do think that there'll be opportunities, especially early, for him to capitalize on that, which is why instead of looking at the Lacerda plus 200, I'm looking at Lacerda sub props. I think that that's the way that I would attack this one, because I do think he has a pretty good chance, but I'm very doubtful that he knocks Chairez out. And I think that we're going to get a much better price tag on him by submission. He's never had a decision win, and I don't think it's going to come here against somebody as tough as Chairez. Right. Like you said, if that sub doesn't happen round 1 or round 2, he'll likely just fall off midway through the second round and get finished. So we see this fight similarly, but I'm going to be attacking it a little bit different with Lacerda sub props. Nice. Moving up to the middleweight division, Roman Kopylov versus Josh Fremd. I tried fading Josh Fremd last time out. This was obviously the spot where we should have been fading Josh Fremd. Jamie Pickett was not. I don't really know. I don't think that Josh Fremd is elite. I really, really don't. And here against Kopylov, I think Kopylov's another person who out of the gate in the UFC, I don't think he did too well, and people kind of wrote him off a little bit, but he was so young and he showed so much potential in the striking that he's kind of put together a great comeback showing in his last couple times out. And, as far as stylistically, it's a striker versus Fremd, who kind of wants to be a striker but should be a primary grappler. That's his bread and butter. I could see him trying to go to that a couple of times, but he's not very good at setting up those entries.
Yeah.
I do think that Kopylov has the power to make him pay once he starts making those reads. So it sucks that Kopylov's this big of a favorite. I thought we might get a pretty decent price tag considering Fremd was a minus 380 against Jamie Pickett. That's just not the case. I guess there truly is levels to this, and I do think that Kopylov is a level above Fremd here.
Yeah, I laid the juice on Fremd last time because Jamie Pickett's a fade for me, and I don't want to call it lucky because it was a 30-27, but sweaty 30-27. Yeah. I mean, just never put the foot on the gas at all. The fight was always there for the taking. Fremd, I mean, he just didn't look good, man. And the guy is massive for the division. He's like 6'4", huge, but he's kind of slow. I think he's hittable, and I think that lead leg is going to get eaten alive in this fight. And if he doesn't mix in the grappling, I don't see how he wins the fight. Kopylov's a motherfucker on the feet, man. His hands are so sharp, precise body kicks. He's so much faster than Fremd. I kind of compare him to like a faster Alexander Volkov. Like everything's so sharp, so straight. The kicks are just kind of like pokes to the body. He doesn't put a ton of power behind his shots, but he's very accurate with all of his shots. And I'll likely stay away because I think the price on Kopylov could be a bit inflated from that last knockout that he got. But he's the pick here, man. I like Kopylov to probably get a second or third round stoppage. Moving on to Lupita Godinez taking on Elise Reed, women's strawweight, I believe here. Could be the clearest path to victory of anybody on the card Saturday, just being 100% honest. I think Lupi's a better fighter by a mile here. Elise is slick on the feet. I think she's got that taekwondo background. But volume-wise, boxing-wise, I think Lupi is just as good of a striker, and this is a 50-50 fight on the feet, despite a lot of people, I think, saying Elise has the big advantage on the feet. But the wrestling should be the difference maker here if she's smart. If she's were to push a wrestling pace, I think there's a chance Lupi could cover the price tag. Easy pick for me here because I see a clear path to victory, but Lupi's dropped the ball as a big favorite before, so I won't be playing this fight, but I think Lupi gets an easy win here.
So I think we see this fight like really similar. It's hard to pick against Reed or pick for Reed whenever she's fighting anybody with like the slightest edge in grappling. Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I think this fight could be close if it stays on the feet, but Lupita mixes in a couple of takedowns, and this fight's wraps for sure. Yeah. So yeah, I'm on the Lupita Godinez side. She could be a parlay piece for me in the week.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, she's my favorite so far that we've talked about. Moving up to the first fight on the main card, we go to the featherweight division where we see Fernando Padilla taking on Kyle Nelson. I think that Padilla is getting overrated here a little bit, man. I think whatever your thoughts were about Padilla coming into the Julian Erosa fight should be all that you have about him. I think that you can practically throw that Julian Erosa fight out of your capping because that could happen in any Juicy J fight. Like any Juicy J fight, he could get knocked out in the first round. We really see Erosa bring out or kind of make fighters show all of their game once the fight gets extended. As far as that initial onslaught, though, it's anybody's game, and that's just kind of how he rolls. He's going to win some and lose some to better fighters and worse fighters. In Fernando Padilla's case, now he's got a first-round knockout in the UFC. He's longer than Kyle Nelson. He's a Mexican fighter on this card. I think that there's a ton of reasons why people are backing him as a minus 250, but I do think that Kyle Nelson, being a UFC vet, getting that win back against Blake Builder after 2 losses in a row, I think that he has a lot of potential that people like to look past, maybe even because he's Canadian. And I know that that's kind of a stretch, but they don't get a lot of love, especially the men's fighters. I think that Kyle Nelson is going to give a much better fight than Julian Erosa did last time out. And if you can get Nelson at, plus 200 or better, I don't think that that's a bad underdog stab, as I do think that he can make this fight close. And I'm curious to see how this fight plays out grappling wise. I'm not really sure how to get a read on that. If you could enlighten me.
I was quite shocked to hear that take and completely agree with you, man. I think I know who the UFC wants to win here, but this line's got just, I don't know, it's wide as shit to me, man. Nelson has made clear improvements in his game. He is more patient. He's shown a better gas tank. He's mixing things up, landing takedowns. He's shown a sense of durability. He's cashed as a big underdog last time out. Man, I feel like the later this fight goes, that price tag on Kyle Nelson is going to look better and better and better. I still think early on in this fight, Padilla is long. He's fast. His hands are smooth. He could be a handful. He's got some slick boxing, some kind of opportunistic subs. And for a guy who's only 26 years old, he's very experienced. He's very durable. I could never put him in a parlay or anything, man, because I have seen massive improvements from Kyle Nelson. I think Doo Ho Choi is just as dangerous of a striker as Fernando Padilla is. And for Kyle Nelson to go to Korea, I do believe, walk away with a draw in that fight. Kyle Nelson's been in there with the better competition, man. He's fought, who else? Jai Herbert, another long, rangy striker. He's dealt with this kind of body style before. And I do think he can make it interesting with the grappling if he's able to land some takedowns. So it's another line. I think I picked Kyle Nelson in Canada against Blake Builder and didn't bet him at plus 200. So I don't know, man. I'm monitoring this one all week too. You might see Kyle Nelson as an underdog shot for me as well, man. I like to hear those as your thoughts too. Daniel Zellhuber versus Christos Giagos at men's lightweight. Second bet of the night for me here. I laid minus 230 straight on Zellhuber, and I'm looking at playing him inside the distance as well. He's one of these guys I do give a pass for their debut. I'm not going to jump ship. I think I almost kind of see it like Ian Gary, man. I see the goods in this guy. 13-1, 24 years old, fantastic frame for the division. Coming in here with like a 3-inch height, 6 inches in reach. I think the guy is dangerous everywhere. If this plays out on the feet, I don't even think the fight's close. I think the Golden Boy puts Giagos away pretty easily on the feet with his boxing, with his jab, how fast he is. I like his opportunistic subs. Giagos seems to really have to mix in his wrestling to have any success late, and I think he somehow finds a way into people's submissions. We've seen him struggle on the feet with guys like Sean Soriano. He's one of these guys like you talked about with 10 losses in his career at this point. His gas tank is inferior. I don't see him stalling, and I don't see him winning minutes on the mat, man. I just don't see him getting the job done. I personally think Zellhuber is more of a legit talent than the next guy we talk about in our next fight, man. I really like Daniel Zellhuber, and I'm looking to potentially double down on him inside the distance here against Giagos.
I certainly think that Zellhuber has the physical advantages I like to see in a prospect, That being said, I'm not as high on Zellhuber. I think he's a little fraudulent. Now, we have seen first off that because he's so young, he can get frustrated. We saw that in the Trey Ogden fight where he just couldn't figure it out. Trey Ogden's not a good fighter. Right. And, that was last year that he was losing to him. That's not a good sign. I think another thing that I'm a little worried about and why I'd caution you about playing the inside the distance fight is we saw Zellhuber tearing it up in the Combate regional scene. But the moment he had to step up in competition, considering before the Contender Series, the fight before that, he was fighting a 0-0 fighter. Mm-hmm. And then on the Contender Series, it's a decision. Then his first fight, it's a decision against Trey Ogden. Then the second fight against Lando, it's another decision. It's the first 3 decisions. 3 out of the 5 decisions that he's been to in his career have all been against this upper echelon of talent. And you look at somebody like Christos Giagos, who I think is being being treated unfairly for his wins. I think if you could take all of for his losses, if you could take all those losses out and you see somebody who, is beating Carlton Minus, Sean Soriano, Ricky Glenn, I think that those are at least comparable to all of Zellhuber's wins. I think that's fair. And then I think that Zellhuber gets his ass whooped by Arman Tsarukyan, by Charles Oliveira, by Thiago Moises even. That's a tricky fight and a really bad stylistic matchup for somebody like Christos Giagos, who does most of his work on the ground. Mm-hmm. I think if Giagos could come in here and get the fight to the mat, Zellhuber's so young, there is potential for him to screw up. As far as finishing upside, it looks good on the regional scene, but as far as the UFC goes, I'm not seeing all that much power. I don't know. I'm not laying the juice with you on Zellhuber. He will be my pick. I think that Giagos has a bad rap for unfair reasons, which is why this is probably just going to be a stay away fight for me, but a great litmus test for somebody like Zellhuber, who I still find a little unproven.
Okay.
We move up up the card to our featured bout at bantamweight. Raul Rosas Jr., everybody's favorite fighter, taking on Terrence Mitchell. I've seen a ton of Mitchell love, actually. The thought that he could come in here with the physical advantages that he holds, stuff the initial takedown, and make Raul Rosas Jr. work here. That's not my take, though, man. I really do think that this is a setup fight for Rosas to get back on track. He kind of got stifled against Christian Rodriguez. Just again, I think it was exploiting a young fighter who hasn't really rounded out his complete game. And now he understands where his deficiencies are. I think he'll be able to get back on track here against somebody in Terrence Mitchell, who physicality is on the lower end, man. He does tend to get ragdolled when he's inside the octagon. And I think that Rosas has that exact attack style. So I do see an early takedown for Raul. Him getting the back, and then whether it's riding him out or finding that early finish, he's strong enough that if he does want to sell out for a rear naked choke, he can just face crank him and get the tap. I've got Rosas Jr. by sub here against Terrence Mitchell. I'm not worried about the length of Mitchell.
You and me both, man. Raul Rosas first round submission. Coming off the first loss of his career, hopefully he uses that as a learning experience. The guy came out too fast, sort of an adrenaline dump, kind of got a bit too cocky from that Jay Perrin performance, but he's got all the time in the world to improve. We're not talking about a 23 or 24-year-old. We're talking about an 18-year-old kid, plenty of time to get better. I think he has got incredible jiu-jitsu. His cage wrestling is great. I think he's going to push Terrence up against the fence, drag him down, sub him early. We're talking about an Alaskan FC guy, bad competition at one point, took a 5-year hiatus from MMA, come back, short notice fight against Cameron Simon. And I think at this point, Cameron Simon is a better fighter than Raul Rosas is. But in terms of their skill set and who's more dangerous, who's got the more finishing upside early in a fight, man, I think that's Raul Rosas Jr. all day, and I think he gets Terrence Mitchell out of here in round one. Doesn't even make it close, man. Rosas is the pick for me. Getting to the best two fights on the card, co-main event, my favorite man, Kevin Holland taking on Jack Della Maddalena. It's the most exciting fight on the card in my eyes. We've seen the line flip. JDM was like plus 110, plus 105, now sitting at minus 145. And I agree with the money coming in, man. I do. I think Kevin has looked a lot better at 170. I think his length can be a real issue for these guys. He's fast, he's athletic, and unorthodox in his approach. But I really do think you have to wrestle Jack Della Maddalena. Maybe Kevin can use that front choke series we talked about. We've seen Ange Lusa get JDM in that head and arm choke. We saw him be very, very close to finishing the Darce. I just can't trust Kevin Holland to initiate any of the grappling here. And at range, Jack is one of the best boxers in the UFC, hands down. His hands are so smooth, and I trust him to find the shot way more here. If he can get in on the inside, he's got a ton of body to hit. I think he's better at finding the chin. I think he's a whole lot more durable than Kevin Holland. And I think this line, well, the early line on Jack Della Maddalena had a whole lot to do with his most recent performance against Basil Hafez. And it couldn't be a more polar opposite from Kevin Holland. We're talking about completely different body styles, completely different approach to the fight. Basil Hafez shot for 20 takedowns. We got to talk about Jack Della Maddalena cutting weight for Sean Brady, having to turn around and cut weight a week later. I think all that has affected this line, and I actually agree with the money coming in. I think Jack Della Maddalena should be about a -145, -150 here. So I've lost out on the value, but it was pretty easy for me to come out on the JDM side here, man. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I see the fight pretty similarly. I do think that there's a lot more finishing upside on the Holland side than we're really considering. I know that there was a couple of times where the guillotine was close in Jack Della Maddalena's last fight against Hafez. And that being said, it's a different. Kevin's a little bit more slick with his jiu-jitsu rather than raw power when he does lock up a submission. Right. And I do think that that's going to be there if, like you said, he does decide to initiate some grappling. If he doesn't, the way that Jack Della just wears down his opponents with combinations, getting reads as the fight goes on, he might get touched a couple of times. But, man, once he finds his range, he absolutely makes you pay. The body shots are going to be critical in this fight. As you touched on, since the money has moved in on Maddalena, it's sitting at like -150 roughly. I really like the under 2.5 at -150. It's the same price. You get both fighters. I think that the finish from Kevin Holland is certainly going to come in those first 2 rounds whenever they're not as sweaty, not as bloody, whatever it might be, to wrap up those submissions. And then Jack Della, after that 1.5 mark, I think that he starts really making Kevin Holland pay for some of those boxing exchanges. Holland, I don't think that he's going to be able to just keep Della at range. He definitely is the longer fighter. I'm just not sure that he's going to be able to get the respect of Maddalena. Maddalena is one of these guys who's got a face built for punching, and he'll just walk through you. Once he gets close, I do expect him to fold Kevin Holland somewhere in the second, third round, and that under 2.5 looks much better than just picking Jack Della Maddalena when there is finishing potential for the underdog Kevin Holland. Yeah, so I'm gonna go Jack Della Maddalena there and the under. Moving up to the main event, the flyweight championship. My girl Alexa Grasso, she's been my moneymaker recently, dude. I'm excited that she's headlining a card and everybody gets to see her for free. I think that this is an awesome spot to kind of showcase somebody like Alexa Grasso, who doesn't have the mouth to, win over her fans necessarily, right, but she certainly has the skill and everything else to win this fight, gain some fans and popularity, taking on the GOAT, the women's GOAT, in my opinion. I don't like Amanda Nunes, so Shevchenko, the women's GOAT. Valentina Shevchenko. Man, we were talking about this like 2 weeks ago that I think we were both looking at betting Alexa Grasso plus 200 or better. And then at some point last week, overnight, she moved 100 points on every single book in the world. I think it was actually after Dana came out and showed that she had her own customized belt and everything. And then maybe he kind of like, when he was saying that, he was like, on Mexican Independence Day, blah, blah, blah. Maybe people just started putting two and two together and kind of see this as a setup fight for Alexa Grasso. That being said, I think that this is going to be a really close fight. If you take a look at that first fight, it's 2-2 going into that fourth round. If Valentina doesn't slip up, try that spinning back kick, who knows what happens. I know certainly of those 4 rounds that we got to see, the most decisive rounds went to Valentina Shevchenko, and the ones that Alexa Grasso won, they were edging out Valentina Shevchenko.
Yep.
She got the finish, so it's hard to say all that, but I do think that more often than not, we're not going to see a finish here. We're going to see a very close back and forth fight. I think you take the dog here in Alexa Grasso, although I don't love the price tag at this point. I really enjoyed the 2-1 dog status. That's where I would be willing to get in on this. As far as I'm concerned now, this looks like another buy low spot for Valentina Shevchenko. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get to it, but man, I mean, I'd have been all over Valentina Shevchenko at this price had we not seen that first fight. Yeah. So I don't know. I think Shevchenko is going to be my pick. I don't think I want to lay juice on this fight though.
Stats not in Valentina's favor either. Older champions trying to come back and get their belt, typically not successful. You throw in the fact, again, we're on Mexico's Independence Night trying to highlight the Mexican fighters. But honestly, I think I'm more inclined to look at Valentina, like you said, at this point. You and I both cashed. Yeah, I know, it does. We both cashed on Grasso. We cashed on her sub prop. I think year to date, it's the best night you and I have had. And I want to give her props. Her camp spotted something they thought they could capitalize on. They drilled it, and it came to fruition. It's almost like Conor McGregor before Aldo in the back. They were practicing it. They drilled it for weeks. And I want to give her props. The girl is a very well-rounded fighter. She has made massive improvements since moving up, but she still is a girl that I've kind of always had some doubt and reserve for. And I did better last time out against Valentina. But I'll be honest with you. I bet it because I thought the line was wide. I bet it because I thought Valentina had shown some signs of decline. She was coming off a fight where I thought she might have even deserved to lose her title to Talia Santos. And so I thought she was nowhere near deserving of that price tag. And it happened to hit that night. When I watched the fight that night, when I watched the fight back this week, Grasso wasn't really winning minutes in that fight the way Talia Santos was. Grasso wins round one on every scorecard, but it's because she hurt Valentina. She landed the bigger shot there. Rounds 2 and 3, they really start to swing toward Valentina's favor. She starts to get that volume up, and she really starts to mix in the takedowns. I've always trusted Valentina's coach. I think they have a great relationship. I think they sit down and watch tape. I think Valentina knows where her strengths and weaknesses lie whenever she fights a fighter. I think she's very intelligent in the cage, and I think they see that wrestling advantage, and I think they're going to go to it early and often here. It sucks to say, man, because I tried to fade Valentina with Santos again, and when we cashed on Grasso, I do see the decline. But Grasso's, again, kind of been one of those girls that I've always doubt. And I think if you run this fight 100 times, I almost say Valentina wins 60 to 65 of those fights, man. I think Valentina gets her belt back on Saturday. I think she wins a 49-46, pretty clean decision, unfortunately. So I hate that we might disagree. And I kind of want Alexa Grasso to win, to be honest with you. But I do think Valentina's is the spot here. And kind of like Tyson Pedro, I'm used to seeing -3 and 400, so -160. I think I got to roll the dice, man. So
if you are getting on that, do it now. She's like -180, -175 everywhere, but MGM -165 is the best price you can get. And I'm going to just predict that the vast majority of people are going to hop on Valentina -1 whatever. I do think that people are going to feel that way as it gets closer to fight time. But I think the initial sharp money was on the Alexa Grasso over that +200 mark.
Yeah, and anything over +200, like you said, on NOCHE UFC, a fight that's probably going to decision, you do want to have that plus money ticket in your hand. But if you want my opinion on who I think is going to walk away victorious Saturday, I'm going to side with Valentina Shevchenko, man.
How about this? You can get the over 3.5 at under -190, and then the over 4.5 at under -140. That's, I would rather lay juice on that than lay juice on either one of these girls right here.
And the only reason I haven't, I barely cashed the over 3.5 last time in the main event, but I got it at +100, I believe. And now to pay -190 on it, I don't know if I want to do it.
I cashed the over 1.5 at -215 for their first fight.
Exactly. And when they've seen their weapons and things already once before, it's likely going to go late into the fight. So I think
the over 1.5 is minus 715 now.
Yeah.
Like that's nuts. That's nuts.
I there's potential that the money making ability on this fight was last time, not so much this time around. So
and we cashed in on it. So
and we did, exactly. We didn't miss the boat. So if we have to sit this one out, so be it. Is what it is, man. I think that's 11 fights on Noche UFC. Mexico's Independence Night. A lot of these guys in a good spot to back. Like Paris, like Australia, probably going to make me a little Mexico parlay throwing together on Saturday. Yeah, breaking down all 11 fights. Hopefully we gave out some good bets, some good insight. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.